Can they hear me? They hear me live out there. Next beat. That ain't the beat I wanted.
Those was wood
another
beats
beat.
right
Another
there.
beat. Nope. Give me another beat. Give me another beat. Nope. That's not it. That's the beat. Turn it up.
Oh, word.
Turn it up. I gotta hear it a little louder. Can you make it louder than my headphones? Turn me up in my headphones. I'm still stuck in the 80s/90s. Lottos, kangaroo boots, natty ghosts, Velas, jumpsuits and troops, Junos, color Levi's, Bugs Bunny sweaters with the rhinestone ring on it. Fighting and making up the next day. Nobody getting shot. Working a hustling to get it, a get got. We had love for the streets, our family, our foes, our friends. Respect for the elderly. Pager/payphone, sneaking into Adams Theater. Watching Crush grooving tougher than leather. Hopping gates out the college port to bang out, cause you don't wanna get caught at mom's crib or at Bond's crib. Eating funny dinner with the fam. Church every Sunday, 8 o'clock a.m. And even if I fell asleep in the back row or played sick, no matter what, man, I still had to go. 80s, baby. He's a DJ, I'm a rapper.
Welcome. How you doing, everybody? This is episode number 53 of the Xcast here on the EmpireMedia.com. It's day 4,812 in the search for Tim Shovelday, who is probably still mourning the death of Brian Murray.
Have you talked to Timmel at all about that?
Yes, I have.
How's he doing?
Heartbroken.
Is he?
Yes.
I figured he probably
Timmel
was.
from the old Grouty days is very heartbroken over the passing of Brian Murray, as was I.
I figured he was actually legitly heartbroken.
Oh yeah, no, it was a sad day.
He's
the one that told me.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's how I found out. It was a text from Timmel.
I was gonna text him like as soon as it happened, but I didn't have the heart.
Yeah, I know. It's rough. It is rough. Poor Brian Murray. But anyway, if you want to see Timmel, you can see him unsettled on the screen live every night at 10 p.m. Eastern. But you're not watching Timmel. You're watching me. I'm Josh Houslander. With me, as always, is Adam Hernandez, and this is the Xcast. We got a lot to cover tonight. Nothing major, we're just gonna kind of kick around, But man, I mean, God, the country seems like it's a mess. It's a mess, I mean, we turn on the news and the country's a mess. Is it as bad as it seems, Adam? I mean, I don't. I mean, is there some sensationalism going on here? You can feel however you feel on this issue, but I'm just wondering, is some of this being blown out of proportion a little bit, or am I? I know I have strong opinions on it. Adam has strong opinions on it. I'm sure you do too out there listening, but I feel like that's a good way to start the conversation. I mean, am I the only one that thinks that some of this is just being sensationalized a little bit?
I mean, it could be, but I mean, the thing is, though, is when we're sitting here in 2017, I mean, we really shouldn't be. I mean, you would think race relations would be getting better than what they are right now. I mean, you wouldn't think we'd be harkening back to the 60s when when we had clashes, on the streets between two different sides about race relations, and that's exactly what we have right now. And
is it about race relations, or is it about some radical groups on both sides going crazy and us giving them too much credence? Because the thing I just don't get is, you can feel about however you feel about them, but these statues have been up for decades and decades. These groups have existed for so long, and I just don't understand why we all of a sudden stopped ignoring them.
Well, I think it's a lot easier to mobilize now. I mean,
that's a good point.
I mean, the way that, and it goes for both sides. We're living in a day and age right now where social media is prevalent in all of our lives, and information travels much quicker than what it did before. And like I said, it goes both ways. White supremacists, neo-Nazis, white nationalists, whatever, are able to mobilize just like the people who want to protest the counter-protest those individual groups are able to mobilize much easier. And information, and it's not just that. I mean, there's information too that on where these statues are located, and people obtain that information and they're able to go and rally, in support of it, or rally to get it taken down. It's just we're in a different age. That's why I don't know. I just can't put too much into the argument that, oh, well, this has been around for a long time. How come it was never an issue before? Well, I'm sure it was probably an issue before. It's just drumming up the support, pro or con, for it was probably a lot tougher than it is today.
Okay, I mean, I guess the thing that I just kind of don't get is, okay, neo-Nazis suck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, old-fashioned Nazis really sucked. Neo-Nazis suck. The KKK sucks.
Any type of Nazi sucks.
It always has. I mean, these things suck, but, okay, we have freedom of speech, and these groups have been having rallies and having marches for decades, for 75 years, and I just don't quite understand why we stopped ignoring them.
Well, you know what?
There's not much to it. Quite frankly, and I know this is going to be taken the wrong way by people, but neo-Nazi groups in America, maybe this is changing right now, I don't know, but neo-Nazi groups are harmless. It's a bunch of dopes.
Are they harmless? They just killed some girl.
Well, and the guy's going to jail for it for a long time. But it was harmless because this happened, and it's still 150% this guy's fault. He's a murderer. He should go to jail, and he's gonna go to jail for a long time. But we used to just ignore these things. We used to just let them talk. They have the First Amendment right, so let them do their dumb little march and ignore them, and they just go away. Just nobody show up. That's the best way to silence these people, is let them fill out their form, let them get their permit, let them have their march, nobody show up, don't pay any attention to it, and so what?
I think a lot of this, though, started, Josh, and I know a lot of people come from other areas to counter protest or protest, either which way. But I think a lot of this starts with people not wanting that hate spewed in their own town, and they go out, and I think they have every right to do that, to go out there and speak out against these horrible human beings. Now,
I don't know. I like the Bill of Rights, man. I like the First Amendment. I like the 10th Amendment.
Don't these people who speak out against these individuals coming into their town, don't they have as much of a right to speak out against them?
They have a First Amendment right, but they are going against the 10th Amendment by trying to feign the use of one of their rights to take away a right from somebody else.
Yeah, but
your right of freedom of speech isn't a right to not be offended. It's a right to freedom of speech. So let them have their protest, let them have their march, and then you go have your protest later.
But again,
ignore these idiots.
I don't blame anyone. I can't blame anybody for going out and speaking against the white supremacists, especially too for in their case, who want to limit the freedoms of other Americans living in this country. I mean, I know it's kind of a, what do you call it? Is it an oxymoron?
Yeah, catch-22 perhaps.
Yeah, it's catch-22. But again, I'm not going to say somebody going out there speaking out against somebody in their town, spewing racial hatred is trampling on somebody else's right. I mean, they're not.
But it is, though. In some ways, it really is, because you really are trying to silence someone. You are trying to take away their right to do it, and you would be so much better off to then.
Well, are you trying to silence them, Josh? Or are you trying? Are they trying to make a counterpoint to them?
The counterpoint's already there. The counterpoint doesn't even need to be made.
But perhaps maybe one of the most dangerous things in America are the people who are easily influenced. Right. You said it yourself. But you said yourself one day we were conducting a debate on this show, and I went ahead and said something along the lines of, it might be pointless for you and I to be debating this because neither of us are going to change our minds regarding it. I can't remember if you said this off the air or on the air.
I did say it off the air that particular day.
Yes.
I may have said something similar, but it's a point I've made in the past.
Yeah, but you said the whole point of doing this is to not convince each other, but convince other people.
Right. A debate is trying to convince the rest of the people in the room, not necessarily the person you're debating.
And I guess that's part of my point is given the day and age that we are living in, the way that information travels, is it more important now for a counterpoint to get out there and speak out against this than it was 30 years ago?
Perhaps. Actually, I would say no. It's not more important now than it was 30 years ago. But unfortunately, this isn't what either side in these groups are doing. They're not trying to debate each other. They're trying to disrupt the other side's right to speak, the other side's right to free assembly. They're trying to go in there and disrupt. They're not setting up a microphone and saying, this guy is saying X, Y, and Z. This is the logic that debates those points. Those points are ridiculous. Here's the truth. That's not what they're doing. They're going in there. They're throwing signs. They're throwing rocks. They're starting fights. That's it. They're just picking fights.
I don't think they're picking fights.
You don't think these two are picking fights?
Well, I don't think people going out there. Well, the fight. If you're going to be talking about picking fights, it all comes on the group that is organizing these marches on the white nationalist, white supremacist side. Those are the people that are picking fights here.
Yeah, to me,
those are the ones that are going out there and have a contentious topic in hand that they want to spew. Those are the people that are going out there and picking fights.
But a contentious topic is free speech. To me, this is.
But if we're talking about picking fights, though, and isn't there?
Hang on, this is a case by case basis, though. Okay. The person who's the group that's picking the fight is the one that got there second. Whoever signed up, yeah, absolutely.
Well, hold on.
Yes,
though.
whoever signed up to be there protesting first is not the one picking the fight.
They knew these white supremacist groups knew that they were going to get a counter protest. They knew it. They knew it just like the city managers, the city council, whoever it is that approved the permits. They knew that something like this was going to happen.
Speaking and having rallies and having marches for 50 years.
And exactly, but at the same time, I don't know if we've totally ignored them.
Yeah, the media just didn't report on it. There's no big deal.
There's always been a counter protest to it. And another thing too about all of this is I've said this many times before, but Donald Trump has given this sort of a sick legitimacy. He has. And I think that's what makes this a little bit more prevalent now than where we were 20 years ago.
It's not more prevalent for these groups right now.
But it is,
it's
though.
It's just being reported on.
Based on the guy who is in office, it is becoming a little bit more prevalent than what it was before.
Well, the fights are the nastiness is because they're being pitted against each other by the powers that be, by the media. They're being pitted against each other.
I don't know about that. Again, I think we kind of. I think the media in some ways is getting a video game treatment here.
What does that mean?
When we tend to blame video games for kids going out and shooting people, I think that we're kind of doing the same thing to the media in this one.
Oh, I mean, I don't blame them for individual actions, but listen, I don't want people silenced. I want people to be able to speak. I want people to be able to protest. Personally, I think protesting is dumb. I always have. I think protesting is dumb as hell. I think people have the right to do it. They, of course, should have the right to do it. And if you want to, cool. But protesting accomplishes nothing. It's silly to me. It's ludicrous. But you can do it. You can do it all you want. I don't, I do silly, ludicrous things sometimes too, I mean, who doesn't? I don't understand it. I don't understand. I also just don't understand the idea that, a monument that's been there for 75 years is now all of a sudden it's terrible.
I mean, but weren't these monuments put up though during the Jim Crow era of the early? I mean, weren't they put up to intimidate black people?
No.
I would argue against that, but I think they were.
I don't think there's any proof of that. And even so, I mean, okay, listen, if we had like the truly the basic ideals behind federalism, if we had stayed true to any of these ideas, then so much of this wouldn't be an issue, because states would be allowed to have a bit of their own culture, and you would be able to freely not go there, ignore it. Who cares? It's really not that big a deal. Truth is, Adam, you can say it has racist ideas. You can say that people in the South are racist, and that everybody.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying people in the South are racist.
Well, I mean, a lot of people do say that, though. A lot of people do say that,
and that's their own problem for having those.
Well, and that's
those narrow-minded.
It's one of the few, not the only, but it's one of the few acceptable forms of bigotry right now. Is that you are allowed to be prejudiced or prejudge people who live in the South. That's an acceptable form of bigotry.
And I am not, and I for one am not saying that. I'm not saying that just because you live in the South you're a bigot or a racist.
There is a big black fist up in Detroit, Michigan, here where we live. This by many has been viewed as a black power symbol by many in the city of Detroit.
The Joe Louis fist?
Yeah, the Joe Louis fist. This has been viewed by a symbol of that for many years. Personally, I've lived in the Detroit area my whole life. I've known that some black people in the city and outside the city do view it that way. There was a lot of racial issues here. Personally, I always viewed it as Joe Louis fist. It's outside Joe Louis Arena. Who cares? I don't care. I don't care. To me, I always viewed it as Joe Louis fist. It means nothing to me. I think it's a cool little landmark here. I don't have an issue with it. And I also, furthermore, I don't even have an issue with it if there are, for instance, some racist black people in the city who view that as a black power anti-white symbol. If you view it as that and it makes you happy, whatever, it's there. View it however you want. And I'm not denying that there's somebody in the South that says, yeah, there's a statue of Robert E. Lee up there. You know what that means. Black people are going to be slaves again. Listen, if somebody thinks that in the South, that's fine. But listen, I'm going to say something that's very controversial. Robert E. Lee was a great man in history. Perfect? Oh, far from perfect. He fought for the Confederacy. He fought for a cause that I am so very against. But as a historian, as somebody that just loves history, if you can't look at Robert E. Lee and glorify some of the good aspects of this man, of this noble person, in a lot of ways, who is trying, view him from a noble aspect, then you got an issue. I mean, for one thing, if you can't
I guess I have an issue then.
I mean, well, okay, then you can't look at anybody in history. You certainly can't look at military figures.
But the guy was a traitor. He fought to separate the Union, and he fought to have black people enslaved, continue to have black people enslaved. I mean, isn't that enough to label the guy as a as a guy that maybe we shouldn't have a statue of this guy.
You can't judge everyone throughout history by what you know right this second. You can't do that.
But what else is there to know about Robert E. Lee other than what that lasting?
Because there's another side to the story.
That lasting legacy that he left.
So I guess should we then ignore every good thing that George Washington did for the country? Every good thing that Thomas Jefferson wrote and did for the country? Robert E. Lee was actually against slavery.
But there's a false equivalency to Robert E. Lee and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson.
Why?
Because George Washington and Thomas Jefferson didn't fight to split the nation up. They didn't fight to keep people enslaved.
That is the reason you're using to dislike him this minute. But if anyone who's been in a college classroom in the last 15 years knows that there's just as much talk like this about George Washington and about Thomas Jefferson.
But again, though, it's a false equivalency when you're trying to distinguish the two of them.
I mean, so as a historian, I can't look at some of the things Robert E. Lee did and admire him. I mean, Alexander the Great had slaves too.
Okay.
Am I not allowed to like him?
But again, he didn't. Again, my point is George Washington.
Yeah, he rebelled against Persia,
and Thomas Jefferson didn't fight in this country to keep black people enslaved.
So if you have a heritage in that, you're not allowed to.
A heritage in what?
There's people in the South, a lot, whose great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents fought in the Civil War. Those were Americans who died.
Okay.
So you're not allowed to respect your own heritage, to respect your own familial heritage.
Okay, but do we need to have? I mean, respect all you want within your own family, but do cities need to and states need to erect statues?
Okay, Adam,
honoring that?
You said that these were put up to potentially scare black people or to bring in racist ideas. I completely deny that.
Okay.
Because these were put up historically in an attempt to heal the nation. To remind us all that the people that died on both sides of the Civil War...
During the Jim Crow era of the early 1900s?
Sure.
I don't think so. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, okay, this goes... I mean, listen, who is... There's people out there who are worse than the Confederacy.
And we were talking about healing the nation in the 1920s and the 1930s?
Yeah.
I mean, how many years after the Civil War?
This is the heritage down there. This is the history.
I mean, I could see that argument being made like in the immediate aftermath of the Civil War, but not in the 1920s or the 1930s.
So one has to, in the name of political correctness, sanitize history. In essence,
no, we have to get rid of the history altogether. You said that they were erected to try to heal the nation. I could see that happen.
Yeah, to remind the people that their grandparents, their grandparents who fought for this cause, although they lost, although they were wrong, we're still Americans, and we move forward from it. We honor both sides of it because of that reason.
Again, I could see that happening in the wake of the Civil War, not decades after it happened.
Time moves slower back then. There wasn't Google Boxes, there wasn't Facebook.
Well, I don't think that has anything to do with it. But if you want to do something like that, why can't you have a universal statue honoring the Civil War and not just one honoring Stonewall Jackson or
when you're talking about Stonewall Jackson's triumph in a
or was it Bedford Forrest, the guy who allegedly started the KKK, or Robert E. Lee? I mean, why can't it be an all-encompassing Civil War monument?
Why can't any of these things be forgiven or viewed as the historical thing? I mean, there's people still in the Democratic Party who have ties to the old KKK because their families have been Democrats forever.
Okay,
so we're not allowed to listen to them ever.
If they're still tied to the KKK and they're Democrats and they still and they cherish that, then yeah, they're not.
The Clintons talked about how great of a person Robert Byrd was.
Well, didn't Robert Byrd renounce everything that was in his past and
sort of, kinda? Okay, well, sorta, I guess. Okay, because he had to, I guess.
Okay, well, I don't, again, that may be up for debate, but
yeah, I guess that could. So did Strom Thurmond.
Okay,
they both renounced this stuff. I guess later in life. The Confederacy, admitted they were wrong and surrendered.
Okay, but but they also tried to split up a nation, though. They tried to secede from the Union and start their own nation.
England talks to us.
Yeah, they do, but but again, England still has its own country, though.
Right, and we still have ours.
Yeah, but the Confederacy is no more.
Right, they were destroyed. So yes. Why do they not necessarily have... I'm not on the side of the Confederacy. I'm a big Abe Lincoln fan, but why do they not necessarily have the right to secede from the Union like we did?
But they're trying to enslave black people. That was the biggest crux in this. Nasty. Yes. I like to think that between these two sides.
Happened, but you don't. I mean, again, this is such an overused statement, but those who don't remember history are deemed forced to repeat it.
You know what?
That's you don't right. You don't get rid of slavery by acting like it didn't happen.
You're right, but I'm not saying that you just try to wipe away Confederate history. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that when people look at this, whether it's a sport. A name of a sports team like the Washington Redskins or, the logo that's used for the Cleveland Indians or something like this. People always tend to seem to go back to, oh, well, it's history. We need to realize their history. You know what? Go pick up a book, take a class, go read something on the internet, go to a museum, watch a documentary. You don't need a statue up to go and realize history in a public place like a city building or like a state building. That doesn't need to happen. Go and put it in a museum. Go and put it in a museum. Oh, how much history are we going to learn from going up to a park?
You ever went on a field trip when you were a kid?
Yeah, but I didn't go to I didn't go and see a Confederate statue. I learned about that in school, or I learned about that going to a museum. Stuff like this can still happen. It just seems like this is an excuse to keep this type of thing around when you don't need to have that excuse. There's a perfectly good excuse to put this in a museum, to continue talking about it in books. And
are you saying that Antifa will not protest these things if they're in museums?
And if that's the case, then that point is wrong. I think there's very fine lines drawn here. I don't think that there's really any sense of having any ambiguous lines. I think they're really defined lines on these statues and where they should go up, where they should be, and what they represent.
Don't you think that should be up to them?
Up to who?
I don't know. South Carolina, North Carolina, wherever it is. Don't you think? I think the fist in Detroit should be left up to.
No, I don't. Not in that case.
I mean, that's a blatant violation of that state's rights to do that. They can put up a statue wherever they want. And somebody from Ohio or Michigan going down there and complaining about it and protest, you don't even have to go there. You never have to go there ever in your entire life if you don't like it. You think everybody in the South's a racist redneck? Then don't go there. Just like I would be furious if somebody from the South was saying that Joe Louis fist in Detroit's a symbol of Black Power and the Black Panthers did terrible things, because they did. It was pretty nasty, but it was a nasty time on both sides. But I'm sorry, I don't have a problem with this being honored. Listen, I'm going to take this a step further. People love to make everybody's a Nazi, right? Everybody you don't agree with is a Nazi nowadays. That's just a thing. Truth is, there's really, it's such a dumb equivalency to constantly be calling everybody a Nazi, which people just love to do. They love to for years. I actually thought for a while there it was going away, that people are going to stop comparing everybody to Hitler that they didn't like, or stop comparing everybody to Nazis that they didn't like. But it's actually getting worse. It's spun right back to it. But, okay. We live in the United States. Mm-hmm. Our grandfathers and great-grandfathers, and depending on how young you are, great-great-grandfathers, fought in World War II. Mm-hmm. I have, my grandpa's old uniform. I have different things that, to honor that service. We won that war.
Was he in Europe or was he in the Pacific?
He was in the Pacific. Battle of Okinawa. Purple Heart, all that stuff. Very cool. I'm very proud of that.
I was sure that was a worse.
What?
I was sure that was a worse, because the Japanese were relentless.
Yeah. Oh no, it was terrible. It was terrible. No prisoners in the Battle of Okinawa whatsoever. Yeah. Not one prisoner. They wouldn't be taken prisoner, so you had to kill every single person or be killed. But if you live in Japan, or you live in Germany, or you live in Italy, there's a really good chance that your great-grandpa or your great-great-grandpa fought in World War II too. Are you supposed to deny that there was any nobility in what they thought? You're just supposed to say, oh, well, my grandpa fought in the war, so I guess he was a Jew-hating Nazi. I guess he was a Hitler-loving bastard. I guess he was a terrible person.
No, but
I guess my family were terrible people.
But you could probably say, you know what, the underlying cause that on the side that they were fighting wasn't good.
Right. Just fine. And you can admit that all you want. You can totally admit that.
I mean, because there's been plenty of people who
you can always point out.
I mean, a former Hitler Youth went on to become Pope, right? I mean, wasn't
kind of, sort of.
Wasn't yeah? What was it? Was it Benedict? Wasn't he a former Hitler Youth?
A bit overblown, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, John Paul II. They made references to that, in Poland as well. That he's a supporter, but it's kind of like if you said you were a supporter in Poland, it was probably because somebody was pointing a gun at your head. But I mean, if you're constantly looking at the negative throughout history. I'm sorry. So if what I said earlier was just so offensive to people that I think Robert E. Lee was a great man because I like to study him and I like to, look at it and I like to point out the nobility. And just like I like to point out the nobility and look at the good parts of Alexander the Great or Julius Caesar or Hannibal of Crete or other great military leaders that, when you're studying military history. Mm-hmm. I like to do that. So I include Robert E. Lee in that list. Because he was a great military leader. Probably one of the top 3 military leaders in human history. Honestly, just with the odds he faced. But you could just as easily always take the negative. You could say that, all right, your grandpa fought in World War II? Oh, I guess he fought for interning Japanese people. That's what he was fighting for. While he was over there, FDR was over here interning Japanese people. We were committing terrible atrocities. We committed atrocities against German soldiers. Everybody saw the Brad Pitt movie, right? That's got to be totally true facts there. So we committed atrocities. So that's what your family was fighting for, was all that terrible stuff. Again, I just don't see it that way. I think
that's another false.
The Confederate soldiers, very few of them owned slaves. Yeah. Very few. Slavery didn't benefit them.
Was that one of the main issues, though?
Of course. Okay. Absolutely. The Civil War was about slavery, and I know there's people on both sides of the argument that love to tell me I'm wrong about that. But it's not true. Yes, of course the Civil War was hugely about slavery. Was it about states' rights, too? Absolutely. Was it about state pride? Definitely. Was it about Southern pride? Yes. Was every single one of those Confederate soldiers fighting for their slaves? No, they didn't even have slaves. Very few people in the South owned a slave. And if you were one of the grunts doing the terrible work of fighting the war, chances are you did not own a slave. Chances are no one in your family owned a slave. And to take it further, if you or anyone in your family owned a slave, you probably owned a slave. Or half a dozen slaves over the last 100 years. The vast majority of the slaves were concentrated on plantations by extremely rich Southerners. The sharecropper, the white sharecropper in the South, did they have it better than slave? Oh yeah, bet your ass they had it better than a slave. Everybody had it better than a slave. Slavery is arguably the most evil human practice. In human history. But these people didn't have slaves. Most of them didn't even have slaves. They really didn't.
But they're fighting to keep one of the most evil human practices in place.
They were also fighting to fight because they thought that was the cause. There's most people fighting in a war aren't privy to the politics, and they're certainly not privy to the hindsight that comes 200 years later. That's just, it's not right. We have this thing for some reason.
Yeah, well, they don't need to know the hindsight, though. I mean,
but we judge it based on the hindsight. We're judging people that fought in this war because of the hindsight. And again, listen, I hate the Confederacy.
We're basing this off of they may not have known any better. I mean, the only thing they knew was suppressing black people. I mean, that's
no. I mean, the only thing they knew was going to war for what they viewed their lives, their livelihood, their culture. The same reason
and
we went to war in
and
World War
and
II.
and to break up a nation. And
Yeah,
I mean,
it was a rebellion.
I mean,
It's a rebellion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like
That's what rebellions are. You know,
Yeah,
the history is written by the winners. We fought a rebellion against England. We won. Confederacy fought a rebellion against the rest of the U.S. They lost, and good people did a lot to try to bring that back in to the fold.
You're not going to find an argument with me when it comes to keeping history around. But again, when it comes to having these statues on in front of state buildings or city buildings, that's where I have a huge problem with it.
Listen, there is a moral argument to be made. I said this last week.
And I always find it so ironic when you see people going out there flying a Confederate and American flag together. I mean, to me, that just it doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. There's people that fly British and American flags together. There's people that it's just it's part of the culture, you know.
I don't understand.
Well, you don't understand it, but you also weren't born in the South, and neither was I, and I don't really understand it either. But I don't see somebody with a Confederate flag baseball hat on down south as I don't instantly say, "Oh, he's a racist. He hates black people. He wants to bring back slavery." It's not what it means to people down there. To some, maybe it could, it might, it might, but that's not what it means down there. Just because you're waving Confederate flag doesn't mean you're a racist. I just reject that. I do, and I feel like the United States has this terrible problem where we love to paint the negative picture of ourselves. We love to self-hate ourselves, which sentence didn't make a whole lot of sense, but we love to put that on us. And this idea that, slavery sucks. It's terrible. It's a truly evil practice. And I'm really glad that the vast majority of planet Earth at this point, especially the modernized parts of planet Earth, have gone away from it. But the idea of slavery predates the use of money. As soon as people in any culture become developed in any sort of way, one of the very first things they do in pretty much any culture is enslave somebody. And this idea that slavery is, unique to America or unique to the South in the U.S. is just, it's ludicrous.
That's absolutely.
Slavery has existed everywhere, and still does exist, actually.
Sure
by
does.
the way,
Yep.
It exists a ton in the Middle East. It exists in China to some degree. One thing I will say too: chattel slavery, the form of slavery used in the in the deep South, in the especially predating the United States, in the southern colonies, is an especially nasty form of slavery. Where you can make the argument that the old Roman or Greek form of slavery wasn't quite as bad. But slavery's slavery at the end of the day, really. Slavery's terrible. So it's more semantics than anything else. But I don't know. I'm scared that history is trying to be sanitized here. That's what I'm scared of. I don't like it, and there's a ton of people out there I don't agree with. I think they have the right to their opinion, and I think they should be left alone. That's it, really. This used to happen in the 80s and 90s all the time. The KKK would have a rally. They would go, they would do their little, they would do it up here in Michigan. They would sign their little waiver, they'd get their permit, they'd go have a rally. No news station would cover it, and nobody would show up. It's the best way to silence these idiots. The KKK sucks, but the truth is, the KKK nowadays is mostly harmless. They were terrible. And
sure. There's no argument.
It's a bunch of dopes wearing white hoods, preaching a stupid old rhetoric, trying to dance around this antiquated, terrible idea and make it sound like it's something halfway intelligent. They always fail. Same with these neo-Nazis. These guys, listen, I'm going to try to stick up for Nazis back in the day, like real Nazis. But these neo-Nazis, come on. These guys are a bunch of cowards. They're a bunch of dopes. These guys aren't soldiers. They're not, they're incapable of nothing. They're getting, they're standing toe-to-toe with a bunch of purple-haired liberals. And the fight's about even, from what I'm seeing on TV. These groups could just so easily be ignored. Just ignore them. They're idiots. They're dopes. And so is Antifa. So many of these groups are just ignore them. And if you're gonna have the right to free assembly, listen, I'm against statism, as you know. I'm against all this stuff. To me, you should just be able to have free speech, have free assembly, all this stuff. You shouldn't have to ever have a permit. I'm against the idea of a permit. But in our nation, you have to go get a permit to have a rally. You have to go to give a permit to get a parade. You have police officers there. Why the hell do we have police if they're going to let this happen? Why the hell do we give out permits if we're going to let two warring protest factions both be there on the same day? Say, all right, you want your right to free assembly? All right, neo-Nazis, you get your rally on Thursday, and here you go, Antifa, you get Friday, and the KKK, all right, Saturday it is, and just let them do it. But really, if one of those groups has a permit and the other one doesn't, it doesn't matter what they're saying. It's not for the police to judge. We can judge as individuals at home and say, Group A, Group B, Group C sucks, or all of the above suck. We can say that. But if one of them is registered and licensed and permitted to be there, let them talk. Let them do their thing. And Adam, when it comes to...
like I said, and if somebody wants to be the counterpoint to it, then let them talk as well.
But then police should probably be there removing them when you are inciting a riot. Because...
But who's inciting the riot, though?
Well,
who's inciting the riot?
You can't judge the peaceful protest by what the people are saying.
You go back to Charlottesville then.
Who's inciting the riot? Whoever threw the bottle. I don't care who throws the bottle, who throws the first rock, or who does, but they should be arrested.
But if you go back to Charlottesville, who are the ones that were inciting the riot? Was it the people who were actually down protesting the Robert E. Lee statue? Or was it the white supremacists carrying the torches in the clubs and
in that case, it was the white supremacists
and showing up with the guns and
no, in that case it was the white supremacists. In that case it was. But like I said last week on this show, there is several moral arguments to be made for taking down these statues. Mm-hmm. There are several moral arguments to be made for this. I have made them in the past, and I will make them in the future. But there is not a moral argument for pushing over a statue and spitting on it and pissing on it and wrecking property.
Again, yes.
So in that case, the people who did that should be arrested. And why do we have
And they did get arrested.
Some after the fact. But police stood around in a circle and watched them knock these statues over. That's ignorant.
Okay.
That's ignorant.
Okay, but they still got arrested. Yes, I agree. You know what? You want to approach these situations in a lawful manner. I will agree with you on that one. Just like, when there's the Berkeley protests. I have no problem with people counter-protesting, but the minute that you go and you start to, destroying storefronts, then that's well, you're not doing much for your own cause. I would agree with that. Absolutely.
Okay.
But
listen, I think we both made some good points here. I think this is a really good discussion. Mm-hmm. I want to point one more question to you. Sure. It's kind of a double question because in the past on this show, mm-hmm. I've made the point that I believe that we're in the midst of World War III already. And this idea that, when we study World War II now, we start around, 1932. People living in 1933 didn't know they were fighting in World War II. They weren't calling it World War II yet.
The rise of Hitler,
right? But Nazi Germany. Rape of Shanghai, mm-hmm. what Japan's doing to China in the early 30s, mm-hmm. all this stuff. We look at that as the whole picture. We pretty much say, in a world level, World War II started around 1932. U.S. doesn't get in until 41. It's not really considered World War II, where the people said, I'm going off to World War II. 38, 39 is when people are, saying that, when they're actually saying World War II is on and I'm going to go fight it.
You can say the same thing about World War One.
Absolutely. Yeah. World War One is a shorter war, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, the World War One, where they were going, say, oh, it's time to go fight in the Great War, is 1914 to 1918. But yeah, parts of it go back before that. I've made that point that we are in the midst of what historians will call World War III. And I'm going to kind of, in some ways, go against that point, actually, a little bit. And some people are now making this point that we are in the midst of a civil war, with these two warring sides going against each other. Are we, as a nation, in a second civil war here? Are we, as a world? Doesn't have to be yes or no to either of them. It could be. Are we, as a world, in the midst of World War III right now?
As far as the Civil War thing goes, Josh, I don't think that. Obviously, we're not in a civil war in the scale of
right.
the first American
Definitely
Civil War. I think the federal government is too strong for something like that to have it overtake. I mean, there may.
But what side is the federal government even on?
It's a good question.
That's why, if it's a civil war, if it's a true civil war, well, if it's a civil war the way it's defined in many other nations, the federal government isn't necessarily on a side.
True.
It's being fought civilly amongst the people. Well,
yes.
uncivilly.
And like I said, I don't think we'll have separate states become involved in this and start taking up arms, and I don't think something like that's going to happen. I think everything in the United States is too centrally organized where something like that won't happen. As far as a societal civil war, is that a word? Societal.
Sure.
I mean, we could definitely have one brewing, and I hope it certainly doesn't come to that. But I mean, whenever you take a look at certain instances like we've seen over the past several months, then it's going to be in the back of your head as to whether or not is this going to be the next big civil war that starts. I mean, perhaps the one prior to this that really stands out in my head was the LA riots. I mean, that was another case where it was just another civil war. Would like to, and obviously, that quelled itself, and nothing really came of that. Nothing grew off of that. Where you constantly had rioting in other cities like that.
Sure.
Every week. But I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe.
And I recently gave a speech, gave a lecture on the 68 riots, or actually a history of race riots in Detroit, in the Detroit area. I didn't just talk about 68, I talked about the 1940s and dating back into the 1800s as well. But one of the key things that is still discussed, civilly discussed for the most part here in the Detroit area when they're talking about that is it called the Detroit Riot or the Detroit Rebellion? Because still many people, and there was at one point, it was a somewhat racially divided thing in the 70s. The white people called it a riot, black people called it a rebellion. And now we kind of, I think for the most part, we do a good job of kind of getting away from it. Just saying, the, 68 or the, it's why actually in the 70s they started coming up with some of these catchy phrases that maybe you may or may not have heard. They used to call it the long hot summer of 68 or the the problems in the just Detroit in 68. And a lot of this sprung from the idea that they didn't want to say one or the other because it was offensive to one side, in essence. because a lot of people did view it as a rebellion worth having, even if it was ugly and nasty, and that a rebellion of some sorts needed to happen, and others viewed it as this was a riot, nothing more than people looting and stealing stuff and breaking stuff. This is just a perception history. I know I kind of digress here with some of this stuff, but this idea that we're potentially in a civil war, I don't deny it necessarily, or that we're in World War III. I don't deny that necessarily either, but I think people should remember that we're really not to that point yet. We really aren't. Look at the World War III aspect of it. We got North Korea. It's scary. Nothing wrong with being a little scared in North Korea. Nothing wrong with this happening, but North Korea threatening to bomb Guam, or even, God forbid, North Korea actually bombing Guam with a nuke, isn't World War III. North Korea versus the United States is not a world war. No. It's a slam dunk. In fact, let's just, for crazy argument's sake, come up with a terrible scenario here. An absolutely terrible scenario. Say North Korea is actually a little stronger than we thought, and they managed to put together a huge attack. They hit a bunch of military bases, and they simultaneously nuke 5 cities. They hit...
in mainland United States.
Yeah, they hit LA, San Francisco, New York, Detroit, Chicago, and Houston. Huge, huge cities. They take out our largest, most powerful spots of industry. We still waste them in this war.
Sure.
It's not even a war. Even though they however much damage they could possibly do, it would be a terrible loss of life. It would be a terrible day, a terrible week, but it wouldn't even be a fight. And it really would not be much of a fight. It's a person running into a room of 200 armed police officers with a knife. He'll, God forbid, he'll do some damage or he'll kill some people, but he's not making it out of that room alive. And this is the scenario here with North Korea. So we're not looking at potential world war here with China or Russia. This isn't really mounting up to be a world war. Even the Middle East, they're tough. There's some tough countries over there, but if it truly was an all-out war where we're no longer caring which faction we're doing or who our allies or who our enemies are over there, the Middle East can't hold a candle to the United States of America in a fight. So I know I kind of am contradicting old statements I made about World War III, and I'm awfully scared watching the news right now that this is the brewing of a civil war, but this isn't two armies lining up here.
No, and I agree with you, Josh. I don't think there's different stages that we need to get through here before we can even consider being on that same playing field when it comes to actual civil war, actual World War III. I talked about, I think I've pretty much said everything I had to say about the Civil War aspect. As far as World War III goes, though, the thing that really makes it scary, Josh, when you think about this, when we were, and you and I can both remember the Gulf War. I remember sitting there, watching CNN, and watching the bombs come down on Baghdad, or watching people in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv sit there and get their gas masks on because Saddam Hussein was sending over Scud missiles. Same thing in Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. The thing about those wars, though, is we knew Saddam Hussein was never going to be able to go across the Atlantic Ocean and bomb us. What's so scary about this Korean, North Korean thing, or even some aspect of the Middle East now are some of the other players that could potentially be involved.
Sure.
Okay, North Korea maybe has a weapon that can reach the United States. I mean, there's still more testing that needs to be done. There's the re-entry and the targeting that they may not have mastered yet. I don't know how much the United States wants to test that theory, though, whether or not they've mastered it or not. Mm-hmm. But China's involved.
Right.
And when you have somebody like China involved, then it's a totally different game. Mm-hmm. And you have to, in some ways, walk on eggshells around that because, and China does too.
Sure.
I mean, China has to walk on eggshells around this too. And if China's involved, does that mean Russia's involved too? Mm-hmm. I mean, will Russia and China be on a side to go against the United States? And then the United States also has NATO. So technically, if North Korea were to attack Guam, would that bring in the rest of NATO? Because it should. It should. I mean, they signed.
It might not because NATO and the UN are worthless.
I mean, they signed a treaty.
But yeah,
I mean, you would think that they would. NATO was there.
It shouldn't even be a discussion. No, it should just be instant mobilization.
Yeah, I mean, it's NATO.
If you read the treaty,
yeah, NATO was there, to battle against the Warsaw Pact.
Right,
and you would think, like you said,
an attack on one's an attack on all.
Exactly.
That's basically in essence what the treaty says.
And if that was the case, and NATO did get involved, I mean, would China, Russia, and some of these other countries start to mobilize as well? Okay, well then you have World War III happening.
Right.
In the Middle East, one of the big aside from ISIS, because everybody's against ISIS in the Middle East, mm-hmm. Whether you're Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, it doesn't matter. You're typically against ISIS. And,
sure.
Iran, I mean, there's a common foe there. What could potentially spark a World War III type of conflict is Syria. Syria has a big ally in Russia. Same thing with Iran. Iran has a big ally in Russia.
And this, like you said, Adam, this is how world wars start.
Yes, and if the United States ends up bombing, taking down a Russian jet, or if a Russian jet ends up taking down an American fighter plane, then that could be the seeds of World War III as well. I mean, the scariest thing, too, was when Turkey ended up taking down a Russian jet.
Right. And
Turkey's part of NATO.
Yeah.
And if Russia decided to attack Turkey, would that then bring in the rest of NATO to this against the originator of the whole purpose really of mm-hmm. NATO being in existence was Russia coming back and doing that again?
Sure. No, I mean, listen, I think the United Nations is well-intentioned. I think they, for the most part, have been well-intentioned since its formation. You can say the same about NATO. Mm-hmm. And I don't have as many problems with NATO as I do with the UN. I definitely think NATO is, a well-intentioned group. And I think their original intention was very good to stop the Warsaw Pact. But in essence, this is why I'm not a big fan of these alliances. Alliances are what lead to world wars. I mean, we see that in World War I, we see it in World War II. World War I only starts because basically Germany had an alliance with the Ottoman Empire. Or, I'm sorry, with Austria-Hungary. And the Ottoman Empire. This is why this happens. That very easily could have been some Serbian kid named Princip just shot the Archduke Ferdinand, and they maybe have a little insurrection down there, would we still constantly be studying the Serbian colonial war against Austria-Hungary right now if there wasn't all these alliances that took place?
I'm sure things would probably be different.
So this is an issue I have with this. And I'm actually not one of those people that necessarily beats up the United States or being the world police. I kind of get the idea that, it's a dirty job and somebody's got to do it. To some degree, I actually do see that.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Right, absolutely. Ben Parker. What's Uncle Ben's last name?
Was it Ben Parker?
No, because Aunt May's his aunt, so she has a different last name than Peter Parker.
Huh. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can look it up.
Yeah. Is it Riley? Ben? Yeah, okay. But regardless.
I'm disappointed you don't know.
I know, I should know this. I should know. My inner comic book nerd, I shut off that part of my brain to have this semi-serious conversation. But I want to say Riley.
I'll find it.
Okay. I do often find myself asking these questions when you're talking about the U.S. involvement in these, because truth is, if the U.S. and China and everybody else, if everybody just minded their own business, and this is going to make me sound like a total isolationist. It's not necessarily what I am. But, South Korea could handle North Korea. If we just let that war happen, South Korea would win. Against
North Korea?
Yeah. South Korea would beat North Korea.
As long as China stayed out of it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. China and Russia and the U.S. And same with the Middle East. If we stayed out of that, Israel would handle most of that problem. If we just let the Middle East, if we just let the Muslim countries fight Israel, I don't want to put all these lives on the line. I realize we're talking about human life here and human life being lost when these happen, but
it's Ben Parker.
Ben Parker? Mm-hmm. Okay.
You know who he was modeled after?
Who?
Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So I was wrong about that. My apologies to nerd kind out there. I do kind of partially feel like, what would happen if you just kind of walked away from these problems? Just defended your, defended your homeland, and let them deal with their own problems. I realize, the consequence is more loss of life, but it's not like nobody's dying right now in the Middle East. And North Korea and South Korea, they've been at their ceasefire for the last 50 years. We really ought to maybe consider letting them deal with that. Figuring it out.
I think that, again, though, and it always goes back to China.
It does.
I think China is the biggest wild card in all of this, and I think that's why it really maybe can't be just left to.
Well, I think that's why South Korea wants us involved. But then, okay, so then I guess North Korea wins, and it's out of our hands now. It's no longer a problem. But I don't think North Korea can even sustain taking in South Korea with their foreign governments. I'm not even sure North Korea wants it. They say they do. But can they really even handle that problem? So it's just the other thing that I want to ask. We can maybe work on wrapping up this subject, but the other thing I want to ask you, basically, is... Can common ground... I'll preface it with a little more stuff after this, but the main question is, can common ground be found here in the United States? Because I'm starting to have my doubts.
With what?
With the political climate and the polarization that we're seeing here in the United States. Because...
you said with politics.
Right. Basically, look at when 9/11 happened. For the most part, people in this country got together, and even though there's a whole lot of people here who didn't like George W. Bush, a whole lot of Democrats, a whole lot of liberals and progressives, for the most part, people kind of rallied behind this. It's there's a whole bunch of Republicans in the United States when FDR was president, but for the most part, we rallied around the idea of World War II. We rallied around the sentiment of unity during 9/11. I feel that although a whole lot of people didn't like Barack Obama, I feel that if World War III broke out, truly broke out, while Barack Obama was president, and the United States went into war mode, I think for the most part the country would have got behind it. If World War III breaks out tomorrow,
With Donald Trump in
office, and the country goes into war mode, basically, and Trump comes out and basically speaks decently. I know that people don't like the way he talks. I'm not crazy about the way he talks. But if we go into war mode, will people support the country under Donald Trump? Because I have my doubts. I mean, I know you're very anti-Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So if tomorrow, God forbid, if China bombs Chicago and Donald Trump comes out and gives a speech with his dumb hair and still, talking the way he talks and everything else, he comes out and says, listen, we got to put our differences aside. We got to go to war with China. They're coming. They're here. We actually do have to, this is our Pearl Harbor here. This is this generation's Pearl Harbor. It's time to go to war. Will people ignore the fact that they didn't vote for Donald Trump and that they haven't liked some of his statements, they don't like his politics, and they preferred Obamacare to Trump care? Will people put this aside and rally behind the nation? Because if they won't, if the nation has actually got to that political climate, to that polarization, then the republic is lost. Aside from Civil War, aside from World War III, aside from these other what-ifs, if that's the case, if people cannot get behind Donald Trump in the country at all, the duly elected President of the United States, people cannot get behind this man for anything, no matter the cause, then the republic is lost. It really is. Then this whole experiment here, it's over with. Well, it was bound to eventually fail.
I think
all nations do.
I think they will.
Do you?
Yes. Especially too if we were going under attack, or being attacked by China. Chicago got bombed. New York got bombed. LA got bombed. Something like that. I most certainly believe that Americans would rally, and this is the thing and this is what I thought was so funny about Donald Trump's whole campaign slogan. The whole "Make America Great Again." I mean, hasn't America? The fabric of this country already been great?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's something.
I think it's the greatest nation in human history.
I think it is too.
Far from perfect.
I think it's the best nation on earth.
Yeah.
And when you go and look at the problems that other countries are having in this world, then you always hear the term first world problems. Well, Americans, in general, have a lot of first world problems. America, United States. I was saying United States more so than America because
it's more correct.
Yeah, there's a difference. The United States is in and of itself bigger than just one man. Mm-hmm. The United States is bigger than Donald Trump. And it doesn't matter, and Donald Trump may disagree with that. I'm sure Donald Trump does disagree with that. I'm sure he likens himself more to a king rather than a president. But don't roll your eyes. I saw some eye roll there.
Well, it's a bit much, but no, he's a very authoritarian individual.
But I think, like I said, the United States is in and of itself is bigger than the office of president. Mm-hmm. The office of presidents, they only get two 4-year terms.
Right.
After that, they're done.
Right.
You never. And I remember something that you said, Josh, against all the people that and that were bitching about Barack Obama.
Right.
I think you said, I'm paraphrasing. You said something along the lines of, "Well, you know what? Now it's unconstitutional for Barack Obama to continue to be president."
Right.
So again, Donald Trump is when it comes to America in general, Donald Trump is smaller than that.
I agree with you.
The United States is bigger than that. So, yes, I do believe that if China or Russia, whoever, bombed the United States, then yes.
I hope so. I don't know if I agree. It's all in the hypothetical at this point, though. So there isn't, I mean, neither one of us are right or wrong. I have my doubts that people could stop the anti-Trump rhetoric if it needed to be stopped. I have my doubts. I hope I'm wrong.
Look, I wouldn't. I don't know how confident I'd be in the leadership of Donald Trump to win World War III for the United States. I mean, that's a different argument.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that he would hand power over and be more of a ceremonial figure.
I wouldn't have a huge problem with Donald Trump as a wartime president. Actually, I don't like Donald Trump much. I didn't like Obama either. If I had to choose, like right now, we're in World War III. It's worse than, it's as bad or worse than World War II, and you have to choose right now who is the leader of the military and the nation. You get Trump or Obama. I'll take Trump.
Oh.
Well, I mean, he's a strong figure. I mean, you need that. He's more Franklin Delano Roosevelt-esque, another guy that I'm not crazy about as a historian, but
Oh yeah, you weren't a big FDR guy.
No, I'm not a New Dealer.
No,
not a New Deal fan at all. Don't really like his.
So
like his 4 terms in office, even though it wasn't unconstitutional back then. A lot of people make that mistake. They say he went against the Constitution. It was not unconstitutional when FDR served his 4 terms. Unprecedented, because George Washington set the precedent of the 2 terms, but it was never in the Constitution until after FDR. So, if you ever hear somebody say that it was unconstitutional for FDR to serve his 4 terms, it was not. It was not.
So you'd be there tearing down statues of FDR then?
Nope. I don't tear down statues of anybody. I make a point not to.
Okay, Reagan, JFK, or Harry Truman?
Has to be in charge for...
Yes.
I'll say Truman. I'd be happy with Reagan too. Definitely I've been okay with Reagan for sure. Truman did the job, so I'm gonna go with Truman. But I'll take JFK over Trump or Obama. That's for sure. But JFK's little Bay of Pigs thing there doesn't
sit well.
Yeah, it doesn't lend the greatest military leader, mantra there. So definitely that I would go Truman, Reagan close second. JFK he's all right. I like JFK.
What about the 2 Bushes? HW or W?
I'll take senior.
Senior?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not a Donald Trump fan. I guess I just don't have as huge a problem with what he's done as president thus far. I don't like it, but he's pretty much doing what he said he was going to do. And you can dislike what he said he was going to do, but I haven't seen him do anything terribly unconstitutional. I can make arguments for what the last 15 presidents have done being unconstitutional, because there's just too much presidential power, too much executive branch power. I mean, I can, anybody that added a cabinet position, geez, don't get me started. But, but it's not some terrible, violation necessarily. I don't like executive orders. I don't like a lot of this stuff. I don't like, new age executive power, but it is what it is. But you want to talk about USS John McCain at all?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, I guess, that we've had so many problems when it comes to these. I think 3 incidents in the past 6 months, and I'm not blaming Donald Trump. I think anybody blaming Donald Trump for that is is just looking for an excuse at that point. But
By the way, if you are one of the haters that felt the need to terribly criticize Donald and Melania Trump because they took 15 minutes out of their day to look at the eclipse yesterday, you're a dope. Okay?
no, I'll blame Donald Trump for looking at the eclipse without any glasses on.
He had glasses.
Not at first. He was looking up at.
Hey.
I saw this funny meme. It was like they're like, Mr. President, you shouldn't look at the sun or you shouldn't look at the eclipse. He's like, you said that. They're like CNN, and then it shows him looking up at this.
Fake news, man. Fake news.
Yeah, sure.
But please continue.
I'm not blaming Donald Trump for something like that happening. Is there a problem with the Navy though? Perhaps. I mean, could this be a big coincidence? Yeah, perhaps. They're also saying that maybe there could have been a hack. It sounds like, into the navigation systems with some of these ships, which everything is. It seems like it's computer based now, so. Right. Perhaps then that's something that is a lot more feasible.
Right. The newest reports are ruling that out, but I don't trust reports or the government, so that doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't happen.
Well, that's something that maybe the government would be more prone to denying is our systems being hacked. But is there really a winner, or is there really a good way out of this? Okay, either you're hacked or you're your captains or your admirals are incompetent when it comes to navigating ships in and around
I feel like
Asia.
sometimes this stuff happens and people are like, oh no, what are we going to do about it? I feel like, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. It was a kind of a goofy tragedy. It sucks. But I don't necessarily think that a whole system needs to be turned upside down because an accident happens. Truth is, those waters are way too populated.
Oh yeah,
there's big ships going through these waters all the time. Every once in a while, they're gonna bump into each other.
Well, that's the thing, Josh. Too is they happened in one of the busiest shipping routes in the world. So
it happened near Malaysia. Maybe they hit the wreckage of that airline. They never found. Yeah.
You know what they think that they may have found pieces of it. Yeah, which that continues to be just. Weird.
It is.
I mean, weird. A plane in today's day and age just dropping off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And not knowing, nobody knows where it
wasn't
is.
Even by the Bermuda Triangle.
No. Which is that in Pumpkin?
I think Bermuda Triangle is in Pumpkin.
Is it
somewhere.
in Pumpkin?
I think he's buried in the innards of Pumpkin.
I was gonna say if Bermuda Triangle is in Pumpkin, then something is seriously wrong with us.
Right. Okay, we talked pretty long on that first issue, but I have this random question just written down here that you saw in the rundown, and we won't take a lot of time on this, but I do just want to ask it. It's kind of a silly question that I just have been really milling over lately because I recently moved and I've been unpacking a million boxes. We won't take long though because we got to get to Around the Empire here, our final news section, then we'll wrap it up. But I was just hooking up my TVs and stuff, and unpacking a bunch of boxes. And am I the only guy left out there? Do people still have like old tech in their houses?
Like VCRs?
Yeah, it seems like this is not even a thing. Like, a couple guys helped me move, and they were just like, some of them thought it was kind of strange. Like, I still have like a bunch of VHS tapes. I still got VCRs. And I hooked up my, my DVD player yesterday. Like, I have the RF hookup still in the back of my TV. I got the fatback TVs and stuff. And
you have the CRTs? Is it the CRT? TV?
Yeah, the RF thing where it has AV on it too, but I just hooked it up like.
Is it flat screen?
I think the one in the living room is a flat screen, but it's still like the fatback flat screen,
Okay.
And I got TVs in my kids' room that are just old fashioned TVs, just little TVs. It's not a big place, so I put some TVs in their room and stuff. That are just old-fashioned stuff, So I mean, am I the only? Do people not even have this stuff anymore? Is the old tech just gone?
I wish Nick was here for this because I know Nick is a big
right.
He's a big VHS guy.
Yeah, and do you have CDs still?
Yeah, but I don't use them.
Really, you don't use your CDs?
I mean, if I want to,
they still come out with CDs, right? I don't buy much new music, but they still do release them.
Do. I stream all my stuff though.
Okay.
It's just so much easier. I mean, you don't have to.
It sounds like even like iPods are kind of like gone now
because
it's all streaming, right?
Funny you bring that up. I mean, the iPad is basically down to the iPad Touch now.
Okay.
I mean, they just got rid of the Nano, and they've been really decreasing their the models that they have. Like I said, I think they only have the iPod Touch, which is
people just stream it off their phones now. Basically.
Yeah, which the iPod Touch is basically just an iPhone without calling capability.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean,
I know it's weird because obviously I'm an internet guy. I'm on internet podcasts all the time, streaming internet shows. But I just I have CDs still. I have DVDs. Do you have DVDs still?
Yeah, but we stream a bunch of our stuff.
Do you?
I mean, we have an Apple TV, and if we want to rent a movie, we just do it off of the Apple TV.
Okay.
Or watch it on Netflix or Hulu or something like that. It's just. It keeps the clutter down, definitely.
I have records. I have a pretty big record collection, but that's kind of I feel like that's different because some people do their records still.
Well, that's
kind of a nostalgic, cool.
Exactly.
That's a throwback. Records are a lot bigger now than they were 10 or 15 years ago.
Oh, sure.
Nobody had records 15 years ago.
Absolutely.
That was old tech, but now more things come out on record. So I got my records I listen to all the time.
A lot of the the more underground bands that I like too, they've always released stuff on vinyl.
Yeah. No, it's cool. And actually, so a lot of things people don't know. I have a lot of old records, a lot of old vinyl. The new vinyl is actually a lot better.
Oh, it is.
It's way better. It's double thick.
Yep.
And it's really it's really nice stuff.
Yeah,
and my old records still work too.
Yeah,
I got records from garage sales from the 70s and stuff. They work great.
Record players and records. It's just a cool technology that was around, and I don't think something like that will ever die. I mean, you don't see.
I have a fairly modern player too, a fairly modern record player.
And that's the thing is, and I think something that helped that too is DJing.
Oh, totally. Oh, totally. Yeah.
That helped.
Rap and DJing, that helped bring back the vinyl.
That helped keep it around. Because people could go, because you could play a record off of a turntable that a DJ would use. I mean, that's...
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, it doesn't make a difference. You don't have to...
The one I have could be used for both.
Yeah.
And then I have a second record player, too, that the reason I have that one, it still works good, but that one has an 8-track player attached. Sure. Because I got a few 8-tracks, and I think that's funny. Yeah,
well, that's 8-tracks are fun just because it was such a lame technology. Right. I think.
Does anyone have cassette tapes, music cassette? Because I do.
I know you're a big cassette tape guy, Josh.
I still have tapes.
I think tapes are awful. Yeah. I don't like tapes. CDs were such a big improvement over cassette tapes because it went vinyl, tape,
right.
And then CD, but CDs.
I know there might be people listening to the show right now thinking, "What the hell is a tape?"
Yeah, could very well.
I mean, really, because my kids didn't know what they were not that long ago.
Yeah, it just they weren't cool. Mm-hmm. I didn't like them.
I bought a while back. Yeah, it was probably 5 years ago or so. I bought a Mustang, a '96 Mustang, and when I first got it, it had a CD player in it also, but then still down low, it also had a cassette player. Yeah, and my kids were like, What is that? And I still had a bunch of old tapes. I just put them in the car. And I would just play them, Still work great. But I don't know. I like all that stuff. I guess I'm just kind of a collector when it comes to that stuff. But
I've got a tape deck in here.
You do? You do?
There's a tape deck up there.
Yeah, in the studio. Okay, wow. All right.
And a CD player.
Yeah. Okay.
Notice they're not on.
Yeah, they're not. That's true. But, I was just wondering if anyone else has this. Because I feel like there are some people out there that maybe even have a small collection of them, but I feel like I actually use them. I'm still that guy that I didn't rebuy everything I had in VHS on DVD, and I definitely then didn't go buy it on Blu-ray. So some movies I just you know, like, oh, if we're watching, oh, you want to watch Indiana Jones? Yeah, that'd be cool. Like, I'm gonna pull out the cassette. I'm gonna pull out my VHS tape. I'm gonna watch it. You know,
Watch old Star Wars, the THX.
You know what's funny is I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, as people may know. You know, huge Star Wars nerd. But a little while ago, I was going to watch Phantom Menace, and I have the original trilogy, probably at least 2 VHS versions and at least 2 DVD versions of it. You know, and I have Revenge of the Sith on DVD. I got Attack of the Clones, but I actually do not own The Phantom Menace on DVD.
Oh, really?
I was still doing VHS when that movie came out, and I have 2 or 3 copies of it on VHS. I do not own that movie on DVD. It never even really occurred to me. Like, I still watch VHS tapes. I don't know. That probably makes me really weird, though.
The thing that I think Star Wars is another special circumstance, because I know a lot of the excuse me. I know a lot of these Star Wars nerds had a big problem, and you may be one of them, Josh, that didn't like what George Lucas did.
The constant re-releases and stuff.
The constant re-releases, the changes and everything, the add-ons, you know what I'm talking about.
Right. The special edition.
Special effects, the new special effects.
A lot of younger people may not even realize that the version of Star Wars that you buy on DVD now, or the version that you watch if it happens to be on TBS, that wasn't really the original version.
No, it wasn't the original version.
There's a lot of added scenes that Jabba the Hutt scene in A New Hope is not. We did not grow up watching that scene.
That scene, though, where they're talking outside the Millennium Falcon, I think that was originally in the movie, but they cut it out.
They did, but Jabba the Hutt wasn't supposed to be a big lizard guy.
He was supposed to be a guy. Yep, he's supposed to be just a big fat.
He was gonna be a big furry type dude originally, and they just couldn't do it with the special effects. They thought it was dumb. So that was it's true. Lucas wanted that in, but he couldn't do it with the special effects.
Yes.
He chose to take that out, not because of the story, but
you know what my biggest problem was? Like, I really didn't have a big issue with the special effects and everything. In fact, I thought it was kind of cool. 2 things that bugged me, though, was the music video that they did in Return of the Jedi. I thought that was incredibly lame. And the second one was how they replaced Anakin Skywalker
with Hayden Christensen.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I don't like that at all, because it doesn't make any sense.
No.
Luke wouldn't know who that is.
Yeah, no.
He never saw that version of Anakin Skywalker. The only version he saw was the old man when he took off Vader's helmet and mask and everything.
I didn't like that they changed the Ewok song at the end either.
No, neither did I.
The old Ewok song is classic.
Okay, there's 3 things.
Yeah.
And that new one that they had sucked.
Yeah, and Empire, for the most part, they just added some background. That's cool. I don't have a huge problem with Special Edition, but truth is, I kind of just like the old one better. If I'm gonna choose, I kind of just like that.
I do kind of like how they had all the different, the different planets, the different worlds celebrating at the end.
Yeah, cool. Knocking down the statue of Palpatine, which evidently
did they do that?
Yeah.
Did they knock down the statue of Palpatine?
Yeah,
I never noticed that.
The Coruscant scene, there's a huge statue of Palpatine. They're pushing it over.
Was there Sith protesting?
There might have been. There might have been some Neo Sith, some Neo Sith guys out there protesting. But
maybe 2 assholes on doing a podcast there,
right?
Debating whether or not that was.
Yeah.
Are they debating Sith? Are they deleting Sith?
The Emperor
history?
was bad, but we don't need to sanitize Sith history here. Okay, we have definitely gone over tonight.
You know what? I want to. We got to do a satire episode. Just
we could do a satire deep issues Star Wars history episode. We really could. We definitely could, and we should. Especially if we can get either Bex or Brad Davis back on here. Some of our big nerd experts. That would be a lot of fun. Maybe Ed too. Maybe Ed. He might be good for it. What's up? Around the Empire with Adam Hernandez is up next, and then we'll wrap up this episode.
Well, big trade today in the NBA just happened hours ago. Kyrie Irving getting dealt to the Boston Celtics in exchange for Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and the Brooklyn Nets' 2018 first-round pick. This was certainly a
You're
trade.
all going to the Cavs, right?
Well,
all that's going to the Cavs.
Yes, all that's going to the Cavs. Kyrie Irving going to
to Boston.
To Boston, yeah. Obviously, this was Kyrie Irving being traded was just somewhat of a formality. I mean, everybody knew that he was going to get traded. It was something that had to be done.
I was hoping he was coming to Detroit.
I was too. I thought that the longer this dragged on, I thought that the better chance that
I agree
that he does.
And I actually thought Andre Drummond would actually been a. I don't like him here. I think he'd be a good fit on the Cavs.
They very well, yeah, but
I don't understand why Boston dealt Isaiah Thomas.
No, it's a nice return for Cleveland, I think, and it was certainly. I could have seen him getting less. I mean, when you look at it from two different standpoints here, when you look and see what Chicago got for Jimmy Butler, who Jimmy Butler, I believe, is a better player than Kyrie Irving since he plays on both ends of the floor.
Sure.
I
think Isaiah Thomas is a better player than Kyrie Irving in a lot of ways. I don't understand why Boston would want this trade.
The thing, though, with this is Kyrie Irving hurt the leverage that the Cleveland Cavaliers had in any of this. When you are approaching a trade and you know that a guy wants out.
Right.
And everybody knew that Kyrie Irving couldn't be on the Cavs anymore. That hurts what you're going to get in return for it.
I think the Cavs made out great in this trade, actually.
So, big trade. Something that definitely needed to happen. And yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see that whole LeBron, Kyrie Irving. That's probably the next big one. Next big intriguing rivalry.
If I'm a Warriors fan, I'm a little bit nervous right now.
You know what? I'm not. I think the Warriors are still leaps and bounds ahead of Cleveland. To tell you the truth, I think so too. But I'm a little bit nervous. That Kevin Durant trade that changed the fabric. So. Anyways, Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump aren't talking to each other. Apparently, they haven't talked in the last 2 weeks. What do you think of this, though, Josh? I mean, I know Donald Trump, he likes to talk about his base, but in order to get anything done in Congress and on the Hill,
kind of got to talk to the Senate.
I mean, you need to have the support of your own party,
right?
Especially when that party's in control.
You got to at least be talking to the leaders of the party, of both parties, actually.
Yeah, I've never. I don't know. It just seems like this is completely counterproductive. And it's certainly more of a benefit to Donald Trump to have this work out than it is Mitch McConnell. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I think it's more beneficial for the American people for them to talk to each other.
Certainly.
I mean, I understand some of Mitch McConnell's complaints, but quite frankly, it's not up to the senior senator of Kentucky to decide whether or not he's going to talk to the President of the United States. Like, swallow your pride, man. You kind of have to.
Seems like both of them have to.
Oh, they do. They do, for sure. But I mean, part of Mitch McConnell's job description directly involves you better talk to the president, whether you want to or not.
Well, the way I look at this too, Josh, is you may be running out of time.
Right.
I mean, 2018, that election is a little over a year away, and if 2018 happens and the Democrats all of a sudden take control of either one, but if they end up taking control of both the House and the Senate, then
wouldn't break my heart to be saying senior senator from Kentucky Rand Paul.
I know that. I know that wouldn't break your heart, but I don't know. You know what? I look at
Not a huge Mitch McConnell fan.
No, I figured you probably weren't.
They need to speak to each other. They really do. Both of them need
the way I look at this too, Josh, I don't think Donald Trump, and this is the reason why I look at this in this particular sense. Donald Trump doesn't want to move away from the Republicans on the Hill, in the Senate, in the House. Donald Trump very much needs these individuals. And yes, they need him as well in order to get anything done.
Sure.
Because for the most part, everything's going to have to pass through the president's desk, and he's going to have to sign it into law unless they're able to work with the Democrats and come up with a supermajority and so on and so forth. However, if things get really bad with Donald Trump, I could totally see the Republicans completely turning on him and voting to impeach him and then remove him from office.
Right. No, I know it is there. I feel like there's got to be grounds. He's got to do something much worse than what he's done thus far. But he's an impeachable guy. I'm not predicting a Trump impeachment per se. I don't think it'll happen, especially while Republicans control Congress.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like it's much more likely, and this isn't me supporting it or not. You know, I mean, I'm just trying to predict the future here. Look at it from political terms. But if the Democrats were to take control of Congress, which historically the opposite party almost always gains seats in the midterm election, almost always. So if they were to get control of Congress here, there's definitely swayable votes on the Republican side. To, you know, for impeachment.
So do you think if the Democrats end up taking control in 2018, do you think that's it's going to happen? I mean, they're going to bring this up.
I think there'll be whispers of it. I still don't think it's going to happen without a true smoking gun. You know, I still would not predict that, but I will say that I think it's impossible until that happens. Just right now, I just don't see him getting impeached by a Republican Congress. You know, I just don't. Even though there are votes there, I know there's whispers. Oh, it's, you know, he's 6 votes away from, you know, impeachment. I don't really buy that, honestly.
I don't know. I don't even think that it's been seriously brought up yet.
Right.
Seems like there's too much going on right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see here. Donald Trump will not pardon former Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio.
Mm-hmm.
How do you say it? Whatever.
Yeah.
And I think he's not going to pardon him yet. I don't think he should pardon him. I think this is just something he should probably leave alone, considering the racial profiling that took place, the abuse of power allegations, misuse of funds allegations. This is just something that Donald Trump should probably, in my opinion, just let go if he wants to continue to. I don't think Sheriff Joe is going to be in quite as much trouble as people think he is either. I think Sheriff Joe's a good guy. You know, a little. I know he's a little much for a lot of people, but. You know, I do like the man. I do respect the man, and I don't think he's going to end up, you know, in terrible, dire straits, like some are predicting. And I think if he gets his pardon, it'll be on the way out. I think he would probably get a pardon on the way out from just about any president, actually. See, President Nicolas Maduro has told international media that he plans to visit Moscow to meet with Putin. This speech was televised to the nation at the presidential palace, and this comes amid Maduro saying that Venezuela-U.S. relations are at worst point. I don't know if they... Again, I don't know why this is becoming a huge issue.
Right.
I don't know why we need to saber rattle with Venezuela. I don't know why we need to say that we're considering military action when it comes to Venezuela.
Sure.
If we want to offer our support to the Venezuelan people, that's certainly one thing and something I would support. However, military action with Venezuela is something that...
Venezuela's a mess. Yeah, it's a disaster.
That should certainly be taken completely off the table right now at this point. But... I don't know. That seems like a something else that you just don't want to mess with, especially with Venezuela if they're having ties with Russia and everything that we talked about earlier.
Yeah,
So.
I don't really know why. I don't think Russia is going to reach out to Venezuela quite the way Venezuela thinks they're going to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I really don't think that President Maduro is going to get the love from Russia that he's feigning right now. You know, I don't see it happening. Venezuela's a mess. I don't think they have a lot of friends in this world.
Yeah, I don't think they do either. Let's see. Bill Cosby has an all-new legal team, Josh, for his spring 2018 retrial. This includes the attorney who represented Michael Jackson in his child molestation trial. What's his name here? Thomas Masseriu. He's the one that defended Michael Jackson.
Too bad he needs Cochran.
Yeah, too bad Cochran's dead. And former federal prosecutor Kathleen Bliss and Penn Sam Silver look like they're all going to be on Bill Cosby's new defense team.
I actually am surprised how fast they're expediting some of the stuff with Bill Cosby. It is looking like he might end up facing some trouble. I really honestly just thought that any decent legal team would be able to just keep this going till Cosby was way too old or dead. You know, I thought they would just be able to delay these proceedings forever. I mean, you know, he's an old man, he's rich, he can... I just always thought they'd just get around it. But the other side, they are expediting a little bit faster than I thought that it may happen.
Yeah, I always thought that was... To me, it just seemed like a slam dunk.
Oh,
against
it
Bill
is.
Cosby,
It is, but
I mean,
in his position of power, financially, and his age, I just don't see how they're gonna... I just didn't see how they were going to put it to him. I thought they would just... I thought their game plan would just be delay.
Yeah.
You know, just to make it happen, and then eventually say, oh, he's too sick to go to jail. You know, I think they're trying that, and I definitely think that's going to be the new legal team's, you know,
game plan.
Their strategy is I think they're just going to go in and just see what they can do to delay it. I think they're going to keep Cosby in the dark, and no matter how well he might be, I think they're going to paint the picture of a tired, sick, excuse me, tired, sick, elderly old man, you know, who can't make it there.
Who like to drug women and...
Right. I mean,
but, you know, he's old now.
Yeah,
so.
None of that matters to them.
What do we have here? We're on the 1 year anniversary of Gawker's demise when Peter Thiel helped Hulk Hogan take down the former web blog started by Nick Denton, and this comes from the Washington Post. Though Gawker is gone, the fact remains that the powerful still don't have the public's best interest at heart. But the courage required to point this out in amusing, satirical, and pointed matter is in shorter and shorter supply. For instance, a recent story about the allegedly cult-like and possibly abusive lifestyle of rapper R. Kelly that appeared in BuzzFeed almost never ran thanks to outlets' fear of a Thiel-type response. It's impossible to know how many similarly important stories will never see the light of day for that very reason. All that's really left to say is that Gawker is gone and that Donald Trump is president. That simple reality should comfort the rich and powerful everywhere and chill the bones of the rest of us. So, I was always a fan of Gawker. I thought that they most certainly got screwed over by a rich guy who funded Hulk Hogan's pursuit to take him down. Even though Hulk Hogan was an incredibly big dirtbag himself. Was Gawker ruthless and seemed heartless a lot of the times? Yeah. But, I mean...
I also thought that Hulk Hogan got a bad rap and some of that stuff, you know. But,
yeah. I don't know. There's
plenty of rich and powerful people out there who are against Donald Trump, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Warren Buffett's one of them.
Yeah.
One of the richest and most powerful.
Yeah, there's this idea that all the rich people are conservatives or all the rich people are Republicans or that big business is always Republican. No. It really isn't.
Here's one for you, Josh. Deadline Hollywood is reporting that a Joker movie is in the works. According to a report from Deadline Hollywood, Warner Brothers and DC Comics are in the early stages of developing an origin movie for the Batman villain, the Joker.
How do you do an origin movie, though? They've never even gone into that in the comics.
As far as Joker?
Yeah, that's part of the Joker's thing is that the Joker's so crazy that even he doesn't know his own origin.
Yeah, I wonder who they get to play him though. If that's the case, you got to wonder who do they get to play Joker? Because ever since Heath Ledger, that's always been.
I wouldn't want to take the role.
No, neither would I. And I always thought Jared Leto didn't do it. He didn't do a bad job.
No, he's all right.
It's just he was the guy that happened to follow up Heath Ledger.
Right. But then if they're gonna keep that whole it's an origin story, so I guess he's gonna be younger. But it just if they're actually trying to tie the DC universe in together as one big cinematic universe like Marvel did, then you got to kind of keep the same actors every once in a while.
Yeah.
So you can kind of keep some of this stuff going, unless they're not going to tie it in. If that's the case, then it's kind of not that crazy about it,
Yeah.
But I know some have hinted that perhaps the Jared Leto Joker isn't the original Joker. I know some have said that he's Jason Todd, or he's some other things that this Ben Affleck version of Batman actually killed the last Joker, and that this is a different Joker.
I always had my problem with the Jared Leto Joker was never Jared Leto, and I think I said this before. It was some of the stupid things that they had to make it out that this guy, Joker's not good. He's kind of a psycho.
Right.
And so they had to write psycho on, tattoo psycho on his forehead.
Yeah,
it's like we already know he's the Joker.
Right.
Of course we know he's bad and he's a lunatic.
Right. Just just kind of like with I didn't see the new Spider-Man movie. I heard it was really good, but I get so tired of the origin stories, man. Everybody
I agree.
Everybody knows that Peter Parker gets bit by a radioactive spider and becomes Spider-Man. Even if you don't want to know, you know that. And everybody knows that young Bruce Wayne watches his parents get murdered, and then he becomes Batman. You don't need to tell that story, for God's sakes. We all know that story, Just show us Batman, show us Spider-Man, show us the Joker. Yeah. You don't need to tell the same damn origin story 10 times in 25 years.
Apparently, according to Anchor Josh, the Super Nintendo Classic keeps selling out immediately.
Really?
I know you have a big problem with these.
I do.
With these systems.
It's junk. It's a waste of money.
The Raspberry Pis, right?
Yeah, get a Raspberry Pi, get an Orange Pi, get an emulator. Go to a garage sale and buy yourself an old Super Nintendo. They still work great. And then go on eBay and get the games you actually want. This is useless. These Super Nintendo minis.
Aren't the games really expensive though?
Yeah. Some of them are. Used video games are high right now. Next week they might be low. It's kind of cyclical with the used video game market. A lot of people are hoarding them right now. I'm one of them. But really, there's so many other options out there, and it's better and it's easier than the SNES Mini. It's just a waste of money. It was a good idea. It's just a waste of money. It should have 10 times more games than it does, and it should cost half as much.
I like the idea of coming out with different genre oriented.
Yeah, but they don't do that. They purposely only give you a few games, and they spread it out over a bunch of genres. So
you can't play actual cartridges in these, though, right?
No, which would be cool if you could, if they had a built-in cartridge port. Thing is, man, go get yourself a Retron. Go get yourself an emulator. You can play it on your old Dreamcast. You can download these games.
That's what I was going to say is, everybody has a computer.
Right.
Nowadays. Emulators and ROMs are incredibly easy to download.
And that's all this SNES Mini is.
And go out and
you don't even get a choice which ones you get.
Yeah, and go out and buy a controller from Best Buy for $20.
Do you know what they easily could have done? You could have put, make the thing 4 times the size as it is. They could have put every Super Nintendo game ever, the entire catalog, on this thing, then charge $200.
That'd be great.
You know, it's still a ripoff. It's still a ripoff, but that's a good ripoff. That's a ripoff I'm willing to do. Every Super Nintendo game ever, one system, $200. Boom. Now there you go.
That'd be sweet.
That's what the SNES Mini should have been. Okay, fine. That's too many. There's like 600 games. Do 3 of them. Do 3 of them. $120, $150 a pop. So now for $450, you can get every one of them over 3 different SNES Minis. Release them 6 months apart to keep the people wanting more.
Or just do like the genre ones. Here's your sports one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's every sports game that Super Nintendo ever released.
Sure.
Here's your role playing one.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the role playing games or strategy games that was ever released.
That'd be better. Yeah, that'd be better than this. I mean, then what do they even get? 20 games or something? I mean, it's junk. It's junk.
So I assume you probably get all the Marios that they release.
I don't even know. I think so. Yeah, you get a lot of the, but they purposely.
I think on one of them, yeah, like
they
Super
purposely
Punch-Out.
leave them out, so then they come out with the next one.
Yeah. So now you're gonna have a bunch of systems,
Right?
Like Super Nintendo systems, Super
Right.
Nintendo Classic systems laying around, which is kind of counterproductive to the whole point. I mean, as far as before I was talking about reducing clutter. So,
Right. No,
I want to play Super Mario.
These are nothing but plug and play ROMs. They could have easily come out with one system, made it 3 or 4 times the size, and this thing could have had every Nintendo, every Super Nintendo, every Game Boy, and every N64 game built into it, and then charge whatever you want.
Yeah.
Really. Still be a ripoff, but charge whatever you want.
Are you a Super Nintendo or a Nintendo guy? Which one do you like?
Both.
You like both of them?
Yeah, I mean, I
like Super Nintendo.
It's like picking your favorite kid. I mean, they're pretty much my 2 favorite systems.
Yeah.
I love N64 as well.
For me, it was Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis.
I recently, a couple weeks ago, plugged in my N64 for my son, and he's been like on this N64 kick. That's just one of the systems he'd just never seen.
I think one of the best controllers ever made.
Oh, love it.
Was this,
love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
And it was so different, too.
Yeah, totally different, very versatile, very fun to use.
Yes, very versatile. It came out during a time, too, when they were making shitty controllers.
Right.
I mean, because the Dreamcast controller I thought was shitty.
Goofy.
Yeah.
Always hated the PlayStation controller. Yeah. Always have. Never liked it.
You never liked the PlayStation? I liked the PlayStation controller.
No, I never liked it. Xbox is okay, but wasn't a fan.
See, I like the PlayStation controller much more than I like the Xbox controller. Yeah. Xbox controller is too bulky.
Yeah. I'm with you. But no, I never liked that PlayStation controller.
And the Dreamcast controller was the worst,
It's terrible.
Worst controller ever made.
But you can get a Dreamcast, and you can get all these ROMs downloaded right onto a disc. Play everything you want right on your Dreamcast.
Without buying Dreamcast Classic that's probably going to be coming out?
No, you don't need to buy that. Find yourself an old Dreamcast on eBay. They're a good system. They mostly still work very well. Get yourself a Dreamcast, and you can get a disc, and you can download every Super Nintendo game ever made onto one disc and play them all on your Dreamcast.
How come Sega Genesis Classic hasn't come out yet?
I don't know, but you can do that on the Dreamcast as well. Get a Sega Genesis game. I mean, really, I got 4 discs sitting at home. One has every Atari game ever. One has every NES. One has Super NES. One has Genesis. 4 CDs play every game ever on your Dreamcast. Couldn't get any easier than that.
Can you save on a memory card like some of those?
Yeah, usually.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to. I haven't tried every game. I mean, they're not all of them are perfect, but for the most part, they're damn good.
Finally, Josh, to finish out the show tonight, the eclipse was yesterday.
Yes.
The eclipse, partial eclipse here in Detroit, but it was the first eclipse in like 30-some years that was viewable from the United States. I mean, the area of totality crossed right through the U.S. mainland's midsection. So
pretty cool.
I know here in Detroit, we're able to see some of it. I think we saw like 75 to 80% of the eclipse happening. So it got pretty dark here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did.
It was cool. I managed to see it. Looked up a couple of times without any.
You didn't burn your retinas.
Didn't. No, I'm good. I can still see right now.
That's good.
Yeah, it's fake news. I'm done. But yeah, it was cool to see. I think the other one's happening in like 7 years, so it's not like it's totally spread out. But And I don't know if the next one's going to be better for this area.
Right, and they've talked about how rare these things are, but truth is, 4 have happened since the last time the Lions won the championship. So,
well,
here in Detroit, not that rare.
Well, the Lions winning a championship or a playoff game is seemingly more rare than there being a total eclipse of the sun.
Absolutely.
So,
significantly more rare.
Yeah, Lions fans see that happening like, oh, yeah, great. When are the Lions going to win a playoff game?
Right, right.
But, Josh, that's it. Are we going to plug next week's show?
Yes, yeah. Tune in next week. We're back to our Deep Issues show, 5th Tuesday of the month. Next week, we are doing Zombie Apocalypse and all the many, many things that go along with the zombie apocalypse prepping, and so on. So that'll be a fun one. That's stretching the what a deep issue is a little bit with zombies, but there's some stuff to talk about with this, though. So it's going to be a really fun show. Adam and I and hopefully some of the other regular cast of the Deep Issues crew will be here, and Zombie Apocalypse, it'll be fun. I know you're big into zombies.
Yeah, Adam, I love zombie. Anything zombie, I think is.
It's gonna be a good show. It's gonna be really fun. We got that one, and then we got 9/11 coming up in September as well. But next week, Zombie Apocalypse right here, theempiremedia.com. Don't miss it. Be there.
Yep. See you later, guys.